I'm thinking with this, Andy, you cool with me just reading it?
Yeah, just read it.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen this article when it came out, and it had me then, and I thought it was brilliant when you first put it out. But with the way it reads, you seem quite passionate about it, I think. There's a lot to go through, isn't there?
There is a lot to go through. I haven't read it for ages, I can't remember what I said.
It'd be nice to remind you of how heated you could have been at the time when constructing this. I often wonder how much smoke was coming off the keyboards when you was doing it. I'll start. So here we have Don't Believe a Word, written November the 2nd, 2022 on the Nottingham City Guitars blog by Mr. Andy Avison. I'll start. Electric guitar TONEWOOD, a myth, complete tosh, believed by those who have bought into it, probably at great expense.
Quite possibly so.
Quite possibly so. Bit of a sweeping statement. An electric guitar works on basic electromagnetic principles, schoolboy physics. No amount of vibrating wood is going to add anything positive to the experience. The instrument was fundamentally designed to be plugged in and played loud, not strummed, unplugged in the dead of night, which is what I like to do sometimes.
Well, we've all done it, haven't we?
Yeah. So what is it that, is there something that got you started on this TONEWOOD debate? Is there something that you saw or read?
Yeah, probably lots of different things, and people being so passionate about it, you know, banging on about the quality of the wood. Particularly, I was involved with some old Fender Telecasters, and I just thought it's nonsense. And as it says in the article, you know, old Leo would have scratched around in wood yards, picking up stuff, and he wasn't there tapping trees.
Yeah.
The guy didn't even play guitar.
That's what always gets me, and I don't think a lot of people realise. A lot of guitar, I didn't realise for a long time that he didn't play.
No, he didn't play, no.
And he just kind of, you know, went for it, which is as it reads. So it all harks back to those heady days when Fender and Gibson moved into commercial production and direct competition of electric solid body guitars. Gibson had been producing high quality instruments for years, often using mahogany, quite possibly because it was deemed to be a quality, expensive timber benefiting the product, and probably because a lot of the craftsmen were from the furniture business and familiar with using mahogany.
Yeah.
I mean, I've often heard about people like Jack White coming out of the upholstery industry, you know, from going into guitars. So would a lot of people have that background then?
I can't remember exactly. I think at the time there was a labour issue and there was a shortage of skilled luthiers, but you know, ultimately they were still working with wood and they were producing quality products, so they knew what they were doing. Sure.
Because along comes Leo Fender with his poor man's broadcaster, which I'll flash you a few pictures up. Do you seriously believe Leo went around tapping trees and planks? No. He probably made his first batch of bodies from offcuts scrounged at the local wood yard, carried away in a sack, and quite a lot more the same way thereafter. Which made me think when I was doing my notes, I can't help but think of Les Paul's, you know, that's what I always think of. What's it called? The log.
The log, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Plank log. What we got here? I had to write some notes because I had to refresh myself on this because I didn't realise it was, so it says, around 1939 he made this, attaching a 4x4 piece of, what was it? It said Douglas or something. It's a weird word I couldn't get my head around. I'm assuming two pieces of, it's in my handwriting, so.
I won't be able to read it, will I?
I'll flash it up here, whatever the word is. 2 pieces of wood connected to, it was an Epiphone. It would have been an Epiphone apparently when I was reading. Body of an Epiphone hollow body. And he befriended, was it Epi Stathopoulos, the original founder of Epiphone?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, this will all be flashed up anyway. But he befriended them, and that's where the log would have come from. Because I remember seeing it where it's saying, like, when's it made of like something to do with train tracks or something? I've heard that before.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
That's all good. Both the big names knew how to sell and what was required from their product. Because with Leo, you know, his first prototype was 1949, the Esquire Broadcaster. That's what kind of flashes up.
Yeah.
Not got to Bigsby yet. So you have decided, God knows why, to buy a brand new guitar. You wander into PMT, rest in peace, or Guitar Centre. Those guys do it really well. Thousands of brand new shiny guitars to choose from. You've probably already decided on a brand and a model before entering the shop. First choice, off the wall, 95% mine made up, is down to colour. Then wait, how it feels and how it plays unplugged. Why? And finally, last of all, plug it in and play. What a strange sequence of events choosing a musical instrument. And I've been there before.
Yeah,
I'm sure
they're massively tactile.
Yeah.
But it's a musical instrument, isn't it? Which it's at odds, really. The first thing should be the quality of the music it produces, but it's not.
No, exactly.
Not at all.
I mean, because there's so much out there. I think internet's a big influence with opinions of stuff and how it should.
Yeah, I mean, the last guitar I sold, one of the NCG guitars, the guy came, it was at a show, the guy came across the room and said, "That looks great."
Yeah.
Nobody was playing it.
Yeah. Too scared.
You couldn't hear it. It looks great.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's what they're all sold on that basis. They're all chosen on that basis.
It's all a wall hanger until you put it in. Yeah. Sure. I mean, I've done it before where I think when I was really young, for me personally, it was like, as a teenager, I'd look up to like Johnny Greenwood out Radiohead. So I'd think, oh, I need a Telecaster. Or see a picture of like Chuck Berry and think I need a big 335. But sometimes it's just a case of going in and trying it.
Yeah.
It's got to be the one for you.
Yeah.
So the chosen TONEWOOD must look and or be able to receive a paint finish. It must machine well, not produce too much waste, be stable and readily available in certain section sizes, not too heavy or expensive, nothing to do with tone there. Resonate is a misused word. The frequency of a resonating object is a function of the material and its structural form and dimensions. Think slender. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge resonated most spectacularly. What's that?
Have you seen that?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
I need to look at that. I can't remember when it was, possibly in the 30s. It was a suspension bridge. I think it was in America. And it was captured on must have been a cine camera or some sort of movie camera, black and white footage, and there was a storm. I don't know whether the bridge was new or not, and it started to resonate. It started to shake, twist. It was a big structure, and it destroyed itself.
Right, okay.
It's an incredible clip of film. You need to watch it.
I will, because just after it just says, Google that if you have not seen it.
There you go, you see.
I will be doing that.
Homework.
Everyone else will be as well. Wood does not resonate. Certainly not slabs 40mm thick with just the input of a plucked string. A guitar body and neck will vibrate ever so slightly when a string is plucked, but at a minute level, barely audible. Sorry, but at a minute level, barely audible. This vibration cannot be detected by the guitar pickup. It may not even be in sympathy with the string waveform. It could act negatively and ultimately detract from the pickup's output. Where did we go with that? We was talking a little bit recently about, when you was talking to me about the sound waves of strings.
The sine wave, yeah.
The sine waves.
Yeah.
Is that kind of linked in with that?
Yeah, I mean, if the pickup is picking up the string's vibration, which is an electromagnetic effect, because the ferrous string is moving within the magnetic field. If the body's resonating, that means the body's moving. The pickup is therefore moving with the body, but is it moving with the string or is it moving away from the string? I don't know.
Right.
But whatever it's doing, it's moving minutely, and we'll get on further in the article. The pickup is damped to prevent it moving. So why did they do that?
Right. Okay.
If they didn't want the body resonance to have any influence on the pickup, that can be the only reason why they put a damper in. Sure.
I see what you're saying.
Or did they not research it?
Maybe
these wonders that produce these fabulous instruments, maybe they just banged them together, worked out the price and thought there's a good profit in that, and there you go.
Would you think there'd be room for, let's say, happy accidents or discoveries in that kind of process? Could there be room for that?
I think so, yeah.
Some like magical accidental, we've kind of caught on something here, this radius of this and the measurement of...
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah, trial and error.
Yeah, got to be on that. Why did he first make a 7 1/4 inch fingerboard.
Yeah.
That's a bit precise, isn't it? How did that come about? I don't know.
Yeah. And again, I often think with how the styles change styles change musically after the invention of the electric guitar, and how they would have maybe had to adapt for certain styles as well. Because there's a bit later on here that goes on about the 335 model. So in my interpretation, it's like, the feedback excess and having to counter that later on and work out, with like a solid slab going through the centre, these little things that they'd have to work out later on.
Yeah.
And then again, even with strings, them changing over the years, things like that. However, Fender and Gibson had this problem covered. To prevent these minuscule but unwanted wood vibrations, they introduced rudimentary damper systems for the pickups, springs and bits of rubber tubing to isolate even further. Many pickups were then suspended in a plastic ring or sheet. We don't want any tone creeping into that wood. I circled this bit. Now tell me, does anybody wax lyrical about the tonal properties of vintage plastic pick guards, pickup rings and wood screws? No.
No, they don't.
They don't.
They fetch very high prices on their own as spares, but that's nothing to do with tone, is it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Because I was thinking as well, I think I mentioned this to you recently, before we talk more about guitars made of different materials, I always think of like Ornette Coleman's saxophone being plastic. No one at Columbia was like, can't have that.
Kind of a plastic saxophone.
Close your eyes, you wouldn't know any different. In order for a guitar string to sustain and generate a high output, the string must vibrate for longer at a greater amplitude. String energy must not leak into the body and cause the wood to vibrate, thus reducing the available string energy. Anywhere else to emphasise from that?
Not really. You just want all the energy in your string, don't you, for maximum sustain?
Mm-hmm.
If you choose to let it sustain.
Sure. And does string gauge debates come into that as well?
It will do, yes. I mean, there'll be a lot of physics attached to that, but also the mass of the string, which is obviously part and parcel of the gauge, the amount of ferrous material in it, which is going to affect the magnetic field. Yeah, so particularly on your wound strings, you've got way more steel in there than a smaller gauge, a lighter gauge.
Got you.
Which is also why, and I've seen it done probably through ignorance, acoustic strings put on electric guitars.
Yep.
You notice it straight away. There's a difference in sound because you've got a non-ferrous wrapping.
Sure.
And a steel core. So there's a reduced influence on the pickup. Got you.
Right. And when you see certain string companies or brands and they'll say it's this percent this material and this percent this, and do you notice differences in it whether it affects the pickups? I mean, I've spoke with you sometimes. I can feel it going from, let's say, an Ernie Ball brand to Dr. Strings. I can feel it in my fingertips, but
I'm not
tonally or
convinced about a lot of the string stories. I don't know. I'm guessing, but I suspect the string companies don't make their own wire. They probably buy it in, so you could well have the same the same wire going to different string companies. They wind their own strings, machine wound strings, but do they actually draw their own wire? I don't know. I would think not.
Sure,
but I could be wrong.
Because it always seems like there's a big science in that as well.
That's something for me to look at. So a 10 or 11 gauge high E string has got to be the same, whichever brand you buy.
Okay.
If they're buying in stock wire.
Got you. Right.
But even if they're making their own wire, it's going to be made on the same machines that the wire manufacturers make.
Yeah.
You can go around in ever decreasing circles with it.
Sure. Never ending into it. Yeah. So from there we've got, in short, the magical TONEWOOD must reject string vibration. This is achieved by increasing body density. An ideal body material in this respect would be concrete or granite. I've personally seen a few internet pictures flash up where you might see a guitar where someone's made it out of a brick or and I mean, how's that to work with? Have you ever done anything like that before with a concrete thing or?
No, I've not had time, but it would be interesting. And then you've got the the Dan Armstrong stuff, the acrylic, that was really heavy, really dense.
Yeah, so they're quite heavy then, the Dan Armstrong models. Yeah,
heavy, yeah.
Yeah, they look it from photos. But you never see articles, dismissing their materials used.
No.
No.
Truss Art makes steel guitars. They're fantastic. You don't see, nobody ever dismisses them. Do they?
Yeah, they're the ones with the T hole cut in the top.
No, that's Travis Bean.
That's it.
The Truss Art are the usually heavily decorated, not embossed, but they're not printed either. It's really clever the way it's done. It's snake skins and leaves. And
Yeah.
God knows what.
All sorts. Ted McCarthy credited the Les Paul's maple cap to Les, who insisted that maple increased the density of the mahogany body, which it clearly does. Maple is relatively very heavy, and hence this increased sustain. Interestingly, they slapped gold paint all over it, and were not too concerned with showing off the grain. Les knew his stuff, very clever bloke. I reckon Les and Leo nicked a lot of ideas off Paul Bigsby, but that's another story, which he didn't, because we're going to come to it now, actually. All three came up with some great ideas, and strangely, pretty much got it right first time round, if only things had been left alone. So, obviously with Paul Bigsby, we've got, I used to see a lot of his models, so like the Mel Travis one, we do for other people. But that was, his first model was 1948, but he would have come from steel guitar, wouldn't he? Lap steels?
Yeah, he made a lot of lap steels, apparently. He used to get commissions to make them. And I don't know how many he made, but I believe he made way more lap steels than he did conventional 6-string guitars, yeah.
Yeah, because we spoke before about the weird idea of them all, Leo, Les Paul, and Paul all hanging around together.
They all used to go out for a beer.
Yeah.
But it would look like at least Leo certainly nicked his designs, I would suggest.
I would also suggest, because
when there's the photographic evidence.
Yeah, we'll pop that up as well, because that photo, when I first saw that first Paul Bigsby guitar, it's like this beautiful, like it's just coming out of that kind of mandolin world a little bit, and we're into, because when you look at the headstock, it's just beautiful.
I mean, today you've got the stuff that TK Smith does. They're brilliant, very, very retro along those lines.
I'd look at them recently. They're brilliant. They're really good. Because he would have done, I think he would have done one of the first double neck guitars. I made a note of that as well. I'll flash that up. We did one in 1952, Grady Martin double neck. And it's like to see something like that in the 50s before like your Jimmy Pages is mind blowing. It's fantastic. Because with an old, I've got down here as well the 1931 Rickenbacker frying pan, which is classed as the first guitar.
I've seen that as a piece of junk.
They're far out, aren't they? They're so strange. I've played on one before, and they're like, you just feel a bit wonderful to look at. But what would they be carved out of? That's more of a frying pan,
I can't remember.
But with the big block like lap steels, would they also be mahogany or maple?
It's probably mahogany. I don't know.
Yeah. What would one of the Fender lap steels be made of? Is that a Champ?
The lap steels, I bet they're made of anything that was lying around.
Yeah, because there's a part in this that gets to that. I'll try and get to it shortly.
Yeah, nobody ever talks about the quality or the tonality of the lap steel wood, do they?
Yeah.
And there's lap steels that are not made from wood. They're made from bakelite or pressed aluminium. But they all sound great. Yeah,
because lap steels remind me a little bit still of like the blues kind of diddly bow kind of thing, where it's just a slab, one string, something to raise it, and off you go, one pickup. In the Gibson factory, newfangled electrified hollow bodies were fitted with heavy centre blocks to prevent unwanted body vibration affecting the pickup and to increase body density. Sought after vintage ES335s were, and still are, manufactured from plywood, a great tonewood, veneer lovingly carved from the tonewood tree, glued together with fairy glue. They make boats from plywood and small aeroplanes.
They do.
That's what got me. I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, you can still buy plywood. I use it now for making aeroplanes with.
Yeah. It's like would for them kind of, is that more for the semi-acoustic range?
Yeah, because it's moldable. It was, I believe they still use the same press, or they used to until recently. You can press it, and it it doesn't crack. You know, it's to say similar basis to the Series 7 plywood chairs. You know, they're moulded in 2 or 3 different planes, which you can do with plywood, but you can't do it with solid timber. Solid timber would have to be carved into that shape.
Okay.
And there are some of the Gibson hollow bodies have got carved tops, not very many.
Right, I see.
So they've got a top that was the shape of it, the slight arch is actually carved from a solid slab.
Got you right. Because I would have, so like, let's say companies like Ibanez, when they first come out, let's say the lawsuit era, they would be, because I've got like I can't remember what year it is, like a mid-60s kind of semi-acoustic 335 copy. Same principle, just pressed, and even back then, yeah. Right.
And it's much stronger. It's not going to crack or split.
Sure.
You know, you're not going to get issues like that. And it's mouldable.
Yeah.
And once you get set up, you'll be able to produce them very quickly because they're just straight in a massive press. Yeah,
and even when you see them now after, I mean, when would the 335 come out? Late 50s? And
yeah, I think it was 58, something like that, possibly.
Yeah, it's like I've never seen a model that's, after all these years, that looks split or...
No.
Something wrong there. I have stripped the finish from Fender guitars and seen bodies glued together from up to 9 separate pieces of wood. Like an IKEA breadboard, but you would never know when played.
No. I did have a photograph, and I think I've deleted it, and I stripped one, and I put a little bit of masking tape with a number on every separate piece that you could see, and there was 9 or 11 separate pieces.
Wow.
But it was okay, it was played fine.
Yeah. And there was no, would you say there was no kind of tonal decision with this? It was more just, that's what you need to do?
Yeah.
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 We're going to the lap steels now. Vintage lap steels sound great, but made from any old base board, not even always wood. They don't vibrate, but the pickups have been hunted down, scavenged, butchered, and stuck in many tellers, emulating Keith Richards. Try finding a 50s Fender Champ with original pickup.
Yeah, very true. I've got 2 in the back there that have no longer got pickups.
Wow. What is it with the pickups with them? Are they different to like a telly pickup?
Yeah, they're not quite. They have to be modified to fit the back plate particularly, and I think a little bit's got to be taken off the top, but you don't touch the magnets or the windings. I think it's just a beefier sound. It's just the way they were wound and the strength of the magnets, but I don't know what the spec on them was.
Did David Gilmour do that? Was he one that... Because he did play a lap steel, but I didn't know if he would have experimented with...
I don't know. I mean, Keith Richards was the one that famously did it, and I don't know what the logic behind it was.
Right.
It might not have been anything. Maybe that's all. Maybe he needed a new pickup, and that's all they had lying around.
Just because, yeah.
Just like, the Peter Green myth with the spinning the pickup round, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Who knows why it was done?
That's a whole video on how to phase, isn't it? We need to do.
Yeah.
The guitar is a composite structure and must be stiff and rigid. The ability to accept and hold screws, bushers and bolts is of great importance, so a hard, dense wood will always be more suitable and have no direct bearing on the tone of sound produced. Here's the sales pitch. Check out the aluminum NCG Moneymaker. So I'll flash some clips up of that now.
Oh wow, I didn't expect to know this on the back. I was like...
With your NCG Moneymaker, was there a direct kind of, I'm going to show the world or the guitar community that it doesn't have to be, or was it just through...
No, it was through just a series of odd circumstances, the way it all came together. Although I guess it could have been made in wood, and in fact the prototype was made in ash, which is too heavy, and it was only done as a model.
Yeah.
To be able to physically hold it and see how it worked in that respect. I don't think it ever had a pickup put in it.
Right.
But because it was designed on a CAD package, you could sort of choose your centre of gravity and do a lot of tweaks that you can't do with wood. Sure,
because it'd be great to do a video more in depth on the Moneymaker and Andy's process of how I would have come about making that, because it's fascinating to see with the 2 bits of wood joined at the side. Would there be a difference? Might be a silly question to ask, but say if the whole guitar was aluminum Would there be a difference in the whole thing being aluminum rather than half of it and then a bit of wood on the side? Or
There wouldn't be a difference in the sound. There'd be a difference in the weight, and possibly you might feel differently about it because your forearm would be touching metal rather than wood. I'm not sure. And I think the weight, maybe it would be similar if it was still, as long as it was still hollow.
Got you, yeah. Because how long of a process researching this would it have taken before you got to doing the first one, let's say? How much research would be involved?
There wasn't a lot of research as such. It was more just the design and coming up with a shape. And then it was, the machining was done by Mark Strickland, and he got a lot of experience with making metal guitars anyway. And he had, beyond the footprint, he had quite a lot of input.
Right.
And I think the curve at the back as it falls away to the strap button, I think, was his idea. And that works brilliantly. It reminds me, it's like just something retro and 50s Airstream about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because for me, when I play the guitar, it's not like anything I've played. The feel is, and it's a lot lighter than you would anticipate.
Yeah, I mean, the people that have come up to me at shows and they look at it, they haven't touched it, and they say, I bet that's heavy. And I'll say it's not, and they'll pick it up and they'll say, yeah, it's heavy, and it weighs less than 8 pounds, you know?
Is that what the weight is? Right. Yeah.
But it's this preconception, you know, it's a piece of metal, it's heavy.
Yes. And is there further development with the Moneymaker in your eyes? Like when you look at your model, is there more that can be taken with it, or do you feel like you've come to a point in this craft with this design of this guitar where you think, I've got this? It
could be tweaked a little bit. There's not much to do on it. You could do a little bit. Maybe you could shave a little bit off the weight even further, you know. But there's probably things that can be done that make the fabrication of it easier, but that ultimately doesn't affect the playability.
Yeah. And if people were to, you know, try out these guitars, they could adapt them if they needed to be. So if they wanted like a custom one that was like a Moneymaker, but a bit more shaved off here, a bit more there, that's
not with. Well, you could do it with that, but it would mean rewriting the software. So you know, it's more and more complicated. If it's a wooden guitar, yes, that can be done quite easily. Yeah, because all the guitars are the same footprint. Cool. And what is the wood choice for the Moneymaker on the body? It's been done in sapele, mahogany. I think there was one done in Douglas fir or something like that. And it makes no difference to the sound. Right. But it is the wood is actually machined to be quite thin. It's feels quite fragile when you hold it, when it's not connected to the guitar. So my choice would be, what would dictate choice would be the strength or the quality of the piece of timber rather than its so-called musical properties. Sure. Got you. Aluminum is very stable and provides a great degree of sustain. I doubt in a blind test that anyone could tell the difference with similar pickups between a vintage Ash Telly, a James Trussart steel Telecaster, an aluminum MCG Moneymaker, an alloy Travis Bean, or an acrylic Dan Armstrong. All covered there, isn't it? It is, yeah. And I can't think of any other. Yeah, I can't think of any other companies that would do anything. I've seen like kind of where you see like exotic wood, where it might be like some kind of fancy wood but it looks a bit too boutiquey. It feels like you're too scared to play it. I've never understood these guitars that are made from exotic woods. Whoever makes them has clearly got a great degree of skill, but you know, I just think make a fruit bowl. Yeah, it's wasted on a guitar. And I don't personally like natural finishes, and not a whole bunch of woods glued together and finished in a natural finish. Sure. Yeah. But it's just a personal thing. I much prefer painted guitars. Okay. But I don't understand these sandwich board exotic woods. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm just thinking... It always seems to me to be more of a statement of, you know, look what I can do. Yeah, okay. Or look what I can access, or look how many forests I can chop down. Yeah. And it makes me... I often think back to... weren't Fender in a bit of spot of bother in like 60s, 70s for doing the wood dyeing technique on like the Coronados? Though, yeah, there was something about that, and I can't remember what it was. But you're right, yeah.
I flashed some of that up because I've seen some before.
I hated those. They were awful. The coronados and the dying.
Yeah.
Just thought they looked horrendous.
An interesting process. I've seen some where it's, probably some TONEWOOD debate in there.
Yeah.
They do, however, all feel slightly different. Guitars are very tactile. Vintage instruments tend to have very thin finishes and often feel slightly different compared to a new guitar of the same model. But that strays away from the subject of tone and slips into the field of desirability. While my comments absolutely refer to electric guitars, Taylor proved a point with their pallet guitar, made from, as you may expect, an old pallet from their yard. Taylor's argument being it was more down to workmanship than quality of wood. The guitar performed admirably, rusty nails, holes and all.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of the guitar that you would have done with the Rock City floorboards.
Yeah, that was a similar idea, I guess. Certainly a lot of rusty nails and glue and however many years of abuse from high heels and beer. Made for an interesting looking guitar.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, it was a natural finish, not a painted finish.
Ooh. But do you reckon the alcohol stained floor added to the tone of the,
Probably did.
And
the way you played it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Affected everything.
Yeah.
Thought so. Oh, and go back to the Taylor thing. So with Taylor, is this something that people can look up then? I'm assuming.
Yeah. You can buy them if you can find one. I did see, it was a while back now, must be 5 years ago, GAC had one for sale. I think it was about 10 or 12 grand. And I've seen one sold at auction. I don't know how many they made, but again, it's a matter of fact. And there were good guitars, interesting, and every one was unique because they didn't all have the same nail holes.
Sure, yeah, I bet.
Or rust stains.
Yeah. My favourite line. And while we're at it, to debunk another myth, wood does not breathe. I've heard this so many times I've said this to you before.
Wood does it. It's never breathed. It doesn't breathe. If anything breathes on the tree, it's the leaf. The wood doesn't breathe, and it certainly doesn't breathe when it's been cut down and then sawn into planks and then seasoned for God knows how many years, and then ultimately dipped in highly toxic finishing materials.
All on here, I'll read it. He's getting too ahead of me. And while we're at it, to debunk another myth, wood does not breathe. The tree ceased to breathe when the chainsaw bit. Logged timber is rough sawn, seasoned to a sustainable moisture content, ideally for many years, and then planned to finish size. Kiln drying may speed up the process. Guitar bodies are finished with clogging, highly toxic solvents and paints. Not much breathing going on there. Do you think people get confused, because I used to, with the whole wood breathes kind of thing? Is it more of a temperature thing? So say if like you're on tour and you're transporting a guitar on a ferry or whatever, or you've left it too near the sun a bit, is that where people are getting confused with this breathing thing?
Temperature will certainly affect it. I mean, your strings are going to change size. Anything metal particularly is going to contract or expand. Wood, unfinished wood, is affected by humidity, so it's seasoned to a moisture content, and it depends what its intended use is. So if it's a piece of furniture, it's seasoned to a moisture content to remain stable indoors. If the humidity changes massively, like you get this in various areas of the US, the moisture content of the timber can change, but that's less likely to do so if it's been sealed with a paint finish or with some sort of coating. But a lot of furniture isn't. It's just oiled or waxed, which is a surface treatment which won't be impervious. But with guitars, with acoustic guitars are different because they're not, they are more susceptible because internally they're not finished, they're not protected at all, they're just raw wood. With most electric guitars, it's only the fingerboard, assuming you haven't got a maple fingerboard that's lacquered, that is unfinished. But that could be sufficient to give you some changes. And then you get issues with fingerboard shrinkage when you end up with all the fret ends will be sharp because the fingerboard has shrunk fractionally at some point after the guitar was manufactured, either because it hadn't been seasoned properly or because it's been put in a totally different environment to what it was intended for.
Sure.
And wood shrinks, I can't remember the exact figure now, I think it's something like 10 or 15 times more across the grain, across its width, so across the width of the fingerboard, than it does longitudinally.
Sure.
So you wouldn't notice the shrinkage in the overall length of the fingerboard, but you will on the width.
Sure, I understand. Yeah, because it's like when I've, I don't know, like it's quite warm at the minute. I know that as soon as if I left my guitar, let's say near a window at night, and it was cool over the night, I come in the morning and I feel like the action is a bit strange, and I have to embed it back in a little bit. Would you say there's something in that, or would you say I'm making that up? Maybe not over a night, but I've had it before where I've left it for a few days, and maybe in the house the humidity's been different, and say if it's gone colder.
Well, I think the string tension changes because the strings have changed. The strings have expanded or contracted, which is what you find with most quality guitars. If you don't, you can put them away. You don't touch them for 6 months. You get them out. Each string will be relatively in tune, but it won't be at concert pitch.
Sure.
So everything has moved one way or the other, but it's all moved together, which is a good sign.
Yes, and that's the string thing, nothing to do with the neck.
No, but if the let's say the strings have expanded, the tension on the tension on the neck will then be less because your strings have become longer. If that makes sense. Although it depends on the stiffness of the neck, the gauge of the string, and so on.
Sure.
But I think you're unlikely to get much of a noticeable change in the action.
Got you. Because if your guitar body breathed, there would be something very weird happening, and it would invariably change shape with the weather.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, this is a prototype made out of a cheap bit of wood, which I'm sort of kicking myself for now. It's only been put together. It was only machined 2 weeks ago. It was perfectly flat for days, and then you won't be able to see it on the camera, I don't think.
We'll do some close-ups.
But it's now curled really badly, and that's to do with the weather.
Yeah.
Well, that's to do with the fact that it wasn't seasoned properly, and it's now resorting to what would be its natural shape. It doesn't matter in this instance. It's a bit disappointing, but it's only something for knocking about and trying, testing. But it wouldn't be acceptable as a finished instrument.
Sure, got you. It's strange how so many want to emulate the great players. Maybe a natural thing. In their day, the majority were not playing vintage instruments, as they were newish at the time. Age catches all. Pickup magnets change, capacitors drift from appointed values, strings were different, pots and looms were different, guitar leads were probably cheap and nasty bell wire. Now there's a thought. So sadly, it's all emperor's new clothes, and ultimately down to your fingers. Don't blame the wood.
Yeah, can't say any more. Other than, since that was written, somebody, and it might have been Danny Beardsley, I can't remember now, pointed out to me that, the Brian May's guitar, which he made when he was a kid with his dad out of an old fireplace. You don't hear anybody criticising that, do you?
No. Still talked about weekly, I'd say, on guitar. You always see it on debate.
Yeah.
Always.
Was it Tonewood? No.
Yeah, exactly.
And I bet you the thought didn't even enter their heads when it was first knocked about, when they were having dinner or something like that. Let's make a guitar.
Brian May's there with his dad tapping all bits of things in the arse.
Tapping all the fireplaces.
Tapping all the fireplaces, tapping all the neighbours' ones.
Yeah.
Because it was Burns' pickup. Front door. Do we need a front door? Yeah, Burns' pickups in that, didn't there?
Yeah.
And again...
Which I think, I vaguely remember reading they were glued in with araldite or something like that. Right. Interesting that you've got no damper system there, then.
Yeah, yeah. And I bet people still now, well, like when they have these... guitar issues where they try and replicate, a guitar of that kind of. They must have discovered all sorts of stuff when they opened it and thought,
Yeah.
But I wonder if didn't his dad come from like a upholstery background, or
I don't know. I can't remember.
no?
There's a big book on it, but I've not read it.
Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, from here, where do you end it from here? Where do we see? Do you think there'll still be this TONEWOOD thing ongoing for years and years, or do you think there will be a time when it'll come to a?
I think it'll drag on because you're always going to have some level of interest and serious investment in vintage guitars, and they'll be deemed to be made from TONEWOOD, which obviously they weren't on day one.
Yeah, yeah,
never have been.
No, because where does this? I've seen a lot from like when you might look at Gibson Custom Shop, or when is it the Murphy Lab stuff, and they're talking about different things of wood, and you'll see them in their office. They'll pull things out, and
well, they've got to do it, haven't they? Because it's all part of the marketing and the whole ethos behind it. It's good theatre, isn't it? That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And you do need properly seasoned wood, as that clearly demonstrates. So you've got to have a stock of wood that's in racks.
Yes.
And that's not theatre, that's just a fact. And you need that whether you're making tabletops, guitars, violins, whatever you're making.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't just slip down B&Q. Unless you're going to make one out of plywood or something like that, or MDF, which has been done. And in a lot of instances, people don't know until they take the neck off or take a pickup out and have a look inside. Yeah,
because I can't ever think I've seen a time where someone's bought a 335 and gone, oh, it's plywood. Didn't realise.
Most of them don't know, do they?
I didn't.
No.
Yeah, no. But to play it, you wouldn't think, oh, I need to swap this to something else.
No.
Andy's lent me a great book at the minute called Engineering the Guitar, Theory and Practice, Richard Mark French, and I was trying to make some notes on it, and it's just because you said about with violin, it just grabbed me a bit on here. There's a bit, page 93, on materials. Traditionally, all guitars have been made of wood. Unlike most violin makers, guitar makers have been quite willing to make instruments from just about any wood available. Any wood available, not material, I should point out.
Yeah, and that's available as well, not cut down to order, not selected.
Yeah.
They haven't been wandering around Borneo.
Yeah. Stradivarius trying to pick his perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. For acoustic guitars, the tops are generally made from either spruce or cedar. Any choice in that? Is it for the moulding of it, or?
I think when you get into acoustic guitars, it's a whole different ball game, and it does have an effect on the sound. It's not to say, like with all of this, it's not to say one's better than the other. It's just it's a matter of opinion, and there is sometimes an audible difference, but it doesn't mean it's better. But unfortunately, in this world, usually the more expensive it was to start with, it is clearly the better.
Sure. Yeah. And again, looking on, I've just made a few little notes on here, because again, it's all to do with wood, nothing to do with, let's say, materials or any different, On page 168, it says materials and construction. One facet of guitar manufacturing that sets it apart from many other products is the variable nature of the raw materials. High quality guitars are generally made from solid wood, little or no plywood. But a whole 335 is.
But is he talking about acoustic or electric or guitars in general?
This seems to be leaning more towards acoustic. So if there's a part where it would dip into more...
Maybe he's not aware of the 335 being made of plywood. I don't know.
Well, when I read your article, I didn't know myself, and it's not something I've watched a lot of demo videos where they'll say, right, we've got the new ES3, or we've got an old vintage one. Plywood's never mentioned. It's always, look at this rosewood thing. And
for years, I don't know whether they still do, as I said earlier, but Gibson had the same press. It'd be a massive piece of kit, probably some steam-powered press that stamps out the fronts and the backs for 335s and other models. But the plywood that they'd be putting into it, I don't know whether Gibson made their own plywood. I would have doubted it, but it's just, I don't know what it is, 5 layers, 7 layers of ply. It's always usually an odd number.
Yeah.
That has probably changed because the glues have changed.
Yeah.
Over the years, I'm sure they won't be using the same glue now that they used to use in 1950.
Sure. And people talk about that as well sometimes with in the way in which you paint a guitar and the finish, that affects the tone. What do you say?
No.
Not my opinion. This is what you can sometimes read.
It doesn't affect the tone at all. It massively affects the feel of it, which you're getting back to a tactile territory again, and can certainly instantly colour your, forgive the pun, colour your feeling for the guitar because it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the thicker finishes, you can tell straight away when you pick one up.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect the tone, no.
Nothing to do with tone, no. That's more playability and feel. Sure. If there's anything else on here.
But also what a heavily painted, thickly painted guitar allows the manufacturer is to use woods that are of a lesser quality, that have got defects, dents, whether that's from the original machining or whether it's happened in the factory. They've not been careful enough. They've knocked it. It's like it fills everything, it covers everything, hides all the faults. It's like when I'm making a guitar here, you'll end up, you start out with a lovely sanded flat piece of wood, turn around, have a cup of coffee, turn back, and it's got a little dent in it, and you've got no idea how it happened. Yeah. It's infuriating,
Sure. It would be quite unpredictable then, in that sense.
I suppose it shouldn't be unpredictable in as much as it's been seasoned. But for instance, you can make electric guitar bodies from poplar, which is a decent wood to use, but it is relatively soft, so that's more vulnerable. You only need the tiniest bit of grit on your workbench that you've not noticed, and you put the body down, you move it, you sand it, and that bit of grit is on the underside grinding away, and before you know it, you've got like a scratch that needs filling before you can paint it.
Sure, I see. So something I can grab from here. This bit that grabs me on this book, 206, predicting sound quality. When you're making a guitar, have you spoke with other guitar makers, is there a thing of predicting maybe not predicting what something will sound like, but after the years of making them, can you think, well, this combination, roughly in my head, I can interpret how it's going to come across?
No, because that's, in my opinion, just down to your pickups. So it depends what. Usually they're not made, unless they're made to order. My approach is it's all down to looks, or what I happen to have available. Or I'm lazy, I can't be bothered to make 2 pickups this week, I'll just put 1 in, So no, you can't predict what it's going to sound like other than knowing what a pickup sounds like.
Sure.
But that wouldn't be the same for acoustic guitars.
Right. Would people experiment with different materials for acoustic guitars in in the same way they do electric, or is that just a whole different process and it's got to be more traditional with acoustic? There's not much room to
I think
play
the whole industry is just steeped in tradition, or customers are so conservative, so they all want Fender, they all want Gibson, or they all want Martin, and the big companies have got to pander to that and just produce the models that are popular, such as the Telecaster, the Stratocaster, and the Les Paul, to state the obvious. The acoustic companies, other materials have been tried. I mean, Martin have done an aluminium topped guitar. There's carbon fibre guitars been made.
I've started seeing them crop up.
Martin makes some essentially plastic bodied thing or plastic topped thing. I've seen them. Most of them I don't personally like, but again, it's a tactile thing more than a sound.
The carbon fibre?
Yeah. Well, with any of them.
Yeah.
Carbon fibre ones were interesting, but I don't know if there's any point. I suppose with something like carbon fibre, it depends what you intend to do with it. Maybe if you're out on a yacht on the oceans month in, month out, it might be a great material to have a guitar made from. It's not going to change much. It's not going to be affected by its environment.
Yeah.
but nobody caters for that sort of a market, do they?
No.
It's not going to work.
No. I mean, I think as well about
You've also got to remember as well that the bigger companies are these mass-produced guitars. They're all made on huge machines. There's massive investment gone into a factory, and they probably have to change the tooling in order to produce something out of aluminium or carbon fibre. So why are they going to do that?
Sure.
When they've already got a market for traditional instruments and materials, that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So the whole process, the process of making money, just stifles innovation. And I guess that's applicable to lots of products, really.
Do you think a lot of guitar makers, contemporary guitar makers in your field, have enough room to experiment at the minute? Because finance will come into it, and money. It's like sometimes you can't.
I mean, it's like doing this. It's a very nominal outlay to experiment and do a few prototypes, but it's actually taken quite a lot of time. There's probably 2 days there. So that's 2 days you're not earning money. But if you're in the fortunate position of not being able to worry too much about that, it's quite interesting, and then it gives you other ideas. Things spring from it, and you go off on a tangent. You never know what's going to come from it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the smaller boutique makers, no, they probably don't have the time, and I think a lot of them perhaps don't have the inclination either. Particularly if they're reasonably successful. Let's say, for whatever reason, they make Telecasters. I don't know why anybody would want to make a Telecaster now when you can buy some there's fantastic stuff available off the shelf. But if they've got a little business where customers come to them and they just want Telecasters, they're not going to do anything else. They're not going to look to innovate, are they? They don't need to.
Sure. In a kind of ain't broke, don't fix it kind of way.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think I think a lot of guitar players have called out for that. Because I remember a few years back when, let's say, Gibson were in a bit of trouble, and there was all these articles and blogs where people are going, we just want what you do best, 50s, 60s, 70s kind of ranges. And they've gone back to that. They still play about with contemporary ideas, but the fact that people just are like, just do what you do best, we want that. And same with Fender. When I mean, after so many years of playing, I was so fortunate that I could be like, I can finally buy a American Fender Jazzmaster. A few weeks later, I play a Squire. This feels just as, if not better, arguably.
Yeah.
Because for people watching this video, now they know that we're not so furious about selected TONEWOOD things. What would you want people to go away with, or maybe consider, whether they're an established player playing for years, or maybe even someone that's just started? Maybe that's where it could be more important than one's just kind of...
Yeah, I'm bound to say consider boutique handmade brands, but in all honesty, I'd have to say they're not going to sound necessarily better. They might be better quality, better made, but it's just an interest thing, isn't it? You've got think outside the box, different designs. When you look at some of the there's various companies in America, Col spring to mind.
Yeah.
Novo guitars. They're really good quality. There's a lot of attention to detail and design, and that's the difference. It's the attention to detail and design. It doesn't make you a better player.
Yeah.
But if you really like the guitar, it's going to make you want to play it more, which can't be a bad thing, can it?
Definitely not. Yeah.
I don't think.
I think that's a good place to leave it, I think. Thank you, Mr. Avison.
That's all right, Ace. Thank you.
Right, we'll get chopping this up. How's it looking?
It's really struggled with that.
No, I did too. It was great. Is it still running? Brilliant. You press that one, my love.
I don't know enough. That's the trouble is for me is I haven't got enough knowledge in my head and enough facts and figures that I can come out with it. I know it's